Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be.
Hey, welcome back. This is episode 200. Can you believe it? 200 episodes. Thank you so much for trusting me all of these years to come into your earbuds, to support you and your family in your homeschooling journey. And I'm just so incredibly grateful. We have so many fun things planned in the next several hundred episodes. I've gotten great feedback from you recently. I'm going to ask you again if you've got guest ideas or topic ideas, please send them to me as we plan out the next season. But I'm just so looking forward to bringing you more and more to support you and your quirky, differently wired, outside the box, neurodiverse kids and your homeschooling of them. Today, we're going to talk about sneaking summer learning in because a lot of you have asked recently about summer schedules and do you homeschool year round and what does that look like and why should we even do it? Why shouldn't we take a break? And is there any benefit to learning throughout the year? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I do homeschool year round to some degree. We definitely take breaks, or we have some days that we slack, some days that we do a lot. And so I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why and what the benefits are to sneaking in some summer learning. This is going to be a good one. I can't wait to have you listen. And I also can't wait to have you share some of the things you're doing this summer. So listen to the end and please reach out with your suggestions, your ideas of what you do for summer learning, as well as your ideas for future episodes and future guests. All right, so let's get on with today's episode. Quick thank you to CTC Math, our sponsor. We really appreciate their support. I love CTC. I've been a paying customer for the last several years. Even before they started sponsoring us, and even after they started sponsoring the podcast, I still pay for my subscription because it is the math program that my kids use and love, and it's been a really good support for us. And so check them out at ctcmath.com. We'll talk a little bit more about it later in this episode, but thank you, CTC, for all your support. Go ahead and pop your earbuds in, go for a walk, or tackle your dishes. I am in the middle of a ton of laundry, so maybe you, like me, have some laundry to catch up on. Do whatever it is you need to do, but let's get on with today's episode. Okay, so like I said in the intro, this is episode 200. Can you even believe it? Thank you so much for the support that you've shown over the last couple of years and for continuing to reach out with great questions and guest suggestions. And just your support has been invaluable. So I really appreciate you. And I can't wait to dive into the next several hundred episodes with you. I have some really fun plans coming up. I've got some interviews lined up with some great guests. We're going to get back to interviewing some guests on the podcast. I have some really fantastic questions from listeners just like you. Don't forget that you can go to the show notes at any time and you can leave us episode suggestions, ask your questions, make guest requests over through the contact form that's there or the voicemail widget. So I'd love to hear what you want to see or hear in the next several hundred episodes. But today, we are going to talk about summer. Okay, I'm so excited that summer is finally here. Well, I guess spring is finally here, right? But we've had some summery weather here. In fact, my youngest, who is very much 10, has been so excited that we have a pool again. So last year, our pool broke. And one of the reasons we purchased this particular house in 2020 was because it had an above ground pool in the backyard and it broke last year. It broke in the winter. And so we didn't have it all summer. We were on a wait list and they didn't come and finally came and installed the pool 2 days before the first snowfall. So we lost the entire summer and we've been staring at this empty pool all winter long. And so the first warm-ish day he was in it, and he's been in it every day since. So he is a very typical 10-year-old boy who doesn't care if he freezes, if it means he can get outside and he can swim. So he's been in it every day. And it's been really fun. Like today, the weather is, as I'm recording this, 70, and it's supposed to be in the upper 70s later this week. Sure, we'll get some more, spring weather and rain, but it's really nice to have some sunshine. So it got me thinking a lot about summer learning. And this is a question that comes up often, actually, in homeschooling circles. Do you follow a typical learning pattern and schedule and flow? Do you follow the school district's calendar, or do you create your own? Do you homeschool year round? What do you do? And I'm going to answer that from my perspective, and I'm going to talk about ways that you can, and why you even should, sneak in some learning into summer and what that looks like. So for those who have asked me personally, we kind of homeschool year round. And oftentimes, if you came over on a given day, it wouldn't look to an everyday person who's used to kind of what school looks like in a brick and mortar school building. It wouldn't look to them like we were actually even homeschooling, because we definitely spread things out. We don't do a lot of like book learning. We do a lot of experiential learning. We do a lot through video and conversations and looking something up because something struck us. And so it looks a lot like play in our home. And then it also is very, very spread out. Our lifestyle is such that if we don't know something, we ask, or we look it up, or we ask our Echo Dot, or we, go to Google, or we read a book, or we find a documentary or something about it. And so because of that, it doesn't ever actually stop for us. But there are some times where we sit down with like more formal things. Like we do math. I've talked about CTC Math on this podcast numerous times. They are our sponsor. We're so grateful for them. But I was using them before they became our sponsor. And I am still, despite the sponsorship, I am still a paying subscriber. And we love it because it's something that we can do year round. In fact, my kids right now are on a cycle that they're doing 2 CTC Math lessons a day because they're short, they're quick, they're both in units that are easier and more review for them. And so by doing 2 activities or 2 lessons a day, it allows them to, right now, when we have a little bit more free time, get a bit ahead so that when it gets busy, they don't have to worry about doing it and they can take a break, or they can just, skip ahead a couple different grade levels. So we try to include a lot of flexibility in that way in our schooling so that when we want to do something more formal, we can do that. When we don't and we want to explore more, we can do that too. And summer is the perfect time to do stuff like this, meaning it's the perfect time to sneak in learning so that, one, and many of you who are veteran homeschoolers will be nodding, and kind of smirking at this next one. One, you can take advantage of when everybody goes back to school, the weather still being nice and the zoos being more open and the parks being more open and the field trip destinations being more open and kind of having them all to yourself. I remember a long time ago, we had passes to the Great Lakes Science Center in Cleveland for years and years and years because it was one of those places that could meet the needs of multiple ages of kids, which is what I had. I mean, there's a 10-year gap between my oldest and my youngest. And I remember going there once. We didn't realize that a couple local districts had the day off of school, so it was jammed. And I remember my oldest looking at me and he asked, "Why are they in our museum?" Because he was so used to us going there with nobody there that it was kind of startling to have to wait in line to do different things that he was able to just do as he wanted. And so by sneaking in some extra learning in the summertime, you get to do more during the school year when everybody else is back in school. But let's talk about just some practicalities to sneaking learning into the summer and kind of taking advantage of that flexibility that homeschooling gives us. So there are some clear benefits to sneaking learning into your summer. And this is true for homeschooling families as well as non-homeschooling families. I do know that there is a small kind of subset of the audience, and it might be you that I'm talking to listening to this podcast, who don't homeschool their kids for various reasons. Maybe you have support systems in place in the school system that you're in that you need to take advantage of for the needs that your children have, or you work full time, or it's just not feasible in the area in which you live right now. And so you listen to this podcast to get ideas for how to enrich your quirky, differently wired, gifted, or twice exceptional kiddo. And this is the segment of the podcast that's really good for you as well. And for those of us that homeschool, especially when we homeschool gifted and twice exceptional kids, these are some clear benefits to doing some schooling in the summer, especially if we can sneak it in. It gives our kids continuity. When we incorporate any kind of educational activity during the summer and just continue to make it part of our lifestyle, kids continue their knowledge and skills. They don't have that gap that public school kids often do. You know, we talk about the summer slide. We don't talk about it a lot actually as homeschoolers, but when I was teaching, we talked a lot about the summer slide because the vast majority of students don't do anything educationally over the summer. It's actually why, and this is so sad, but it's why so many kids come home with packets, enrichment packets over the summer that they have to complete before the beginning of next year, or book reports that they have to do. They don't actually get the time off because schools know that if they take 2.5 months off, they're going to come with gaps or they're going to come having forgotten some of the stuff. It's also why a lot of the first couple months of the school year are review. This is why I tell every parent who ever worries that they're not going to be able to teach their kids all they need to know, not to worry about it, because every kid has gaps and every year kids go into the school relearning stuff that they didn't learn last year. So, or they forgot from the previous year. So there's built-in reinforcement in all textbooks. So if you only finish 80% of your textbook or 75% of your textbook, if you're a textbook homeschooler, let it go because the next level of textbook will start filling in about 25% of what was at the end of that previous textbook anyway. So you're already exactly where they are in public schooling. But we have the ability to continue to reinforce that lifestyle of learning approach, right? If my kids are doing a quick math lesson every day, just to start their day before they go in the pool or go run around in the backyard, that is just part of their routine. It's like, you know, another chore that they have to get done. If we're talking about the things that they're reading as a natural kind of open-ended conversation when we're sitting around having lunch or on the deck or, you know, eating hot dogs or gardening or whatever, it becomes a natural part of our day. Learning becomes the continuity of family life. And so we build this lifestyle approach and kids don't forget their stuff, right? They maintain their knowledge, they build off of it, they keep the skills that they learn during the regular school year, and they can smoothly transition into the next topic and the next topic and the next topic. The second great benefit really to sneaking in learning in the summer is that you can reinforce some of the stuff that the kids struggled with during the year so that they don't lose the gains that they've made in areas that they struggle. Our kids who are advanced in one area are often not advanced. Remember, we talked a lot about gifted kids in particular being asynchronous. So by being able to reinforce some of the skills that they've learned throughout the year, especially in their areas of weakness, we help our kids who are asynchronous continue to make growth in the areas that they're not as strong as they are, you know, in their super strength-based areas or their passion-filled areas. We also have the opportunity, and this is one of my favorite reasons to sneak learning in the summertime through conversations, and we'll talk more about different ways you can do it, but conversations and videos and things like that, is that it continues to build curiosity and engagement in our kids. And who doesn't want to raise curious kids? I mean, that's one of my favorite things about homeschooling is my kids ask me sometimes off-the-wall questions, but they're interesting and they're interested. They want to know those things. They don't just passively accept what the world throws at them. They want to know why, and they want to discover, and they become curious. They want to know what the bug is that's crawling around. They want to know. We heard the other day, we were out on the deck and we heard what we thought was a tree frog. And there has been a tree frog over the last couple of years that has lived like in our deck. And so we were looking around for it and we looked up, and on the side of our house, we saw a gray kind of splotch. Well, we thought that that was the tree frog, and it was really interesting how the tree frog got above one of our windows. And then on closer inspection, we realized that it was the beginning of a wasp's nest. What are they called? It's not a flock of wasps, a swarm. of wasps. I'll have to look that up. They were building a paper wasp's nest. And Isaac said to me, I think Dad knocked a nest off there yesterday or the day before. And I was like, okay, well, I took a picture and I sent it to my husband. He was out of town the last couple of days. And I said, there's a wasp's nest here. And he said, that's where I knocked the old one off. And I said, well, either you missed some or they just came back to rebuild. And he didn't miss any. So they came back to rebuild. And so now we had just had our house sprayed for wasps. And so now we have to get them to come back out because clearly it didn't stick. But Isaac was very interested. We looked all around for this tree frog. We did not find it. We're going to keep looking for it. But he discovered that wasps will go back to an area and continue to try to rebuild because they've kind of staked it out as a good covered area. And so really, once they kind of discover that, you really need to spray if that's what you want to do, or you keep knocking it off. And the curiosity of what was actually happening was something that was natural because not knowing isn't a problem in our home. Not knowing is a chance to go find out. And so when we sneak learning into everything that we're doing, when we build it over the summer as part of our family kind of philosophy and foundation, we raise curious and engaged kids who want to know what's going on in their world. And they know that learning extends way beyond what's happening in their different subject areas. We also help kids see that learning happens as a result of living. It's a real world application of what life is like, right? Whether our kids are exploring outdoors or learning to cook a couple different meals that they can have in the rotation during the school year, or they're trying different experiments, or they're growing a garden, or they're raising chickens in the backyard, or whatever, kids can see how the concepts that they've learned in other parts of their lives are relevant and applicable to their everyday activities. They learn how to convert fractions when they're doubling or halving recipes. They learn how to calculate food costs when they're raising pets or chickens or whatever. They learn how to space out plants and track the growth and identify weeds versus the vegetables that are growing. They apply the stuff that they're learning to real world activities in real world contexts. It also, and this is my favorite part, it builds flexibility. It allows us to personalize our homeschooling experience so that it fits us and we don't fit into whatever the box is that it wants us to. Even still, as homeschooling families, we are guilty often of comparing ourselves to others and looking through Instagram feeds and Facebook feeds and reading books about homeschooling and wishing or thinking our homeschooling needs to look like somebody else's. But by sneaking in learning throughout the summer and doing things as kind of just this is how the flow of our day happens, we become very flexible and personal. It becomes what works best for our family and not what works best for other families. It allows us to explore topics that may not be covered during the school year, nurturing individuals' passions, expanding horizons, getting our kids exposure to other things. It also allows us the flexibility to take time off when others are working, like taking advantage of off-season vacation rates if we want to go on vacation. For some families, this works better than others. It doesn't work great for our family to take family vacations on the off-season because my husband is a teacher, and so he's tied to the public school calendar. But the rest of us could go on some short mini trips to places that we might want to explore that are less busy during the school year. And that's a huge, huge benefit.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about CTC Math. I've talked to you about CTC Math all season long, and I'll keep talking to you about CTC Math because not only are they a great podcast sponsor, but it's really a good solution for your kids. If you're looking for a math program that is flexible, it is adjustable, it is something that you can use with all levels of children, check it out. They have a money-back guarantee. This is the thing. I honestly didn't know about this before we subscribed, and when I was talking to the folks over there before this podcast season, they mentioned it to me, and I was was stunned because what they said was even if you get through the entire year and you don't feel that your child made the amount of progress that you feel that they should have made, there's a no questions asked refund policy. They don't want you to be unhappy. They don't want your kids to be unserved. They want your kids to have the best math foundation possible so they can go forward in whatever it is they want to pursue. So all you need to do is give them a call and explain to them why it didn't work for you and what you felt didn't work, and they will give you a complete and total refund. Seriously. Those are some people of integrity. I had a problem a couple of years ago that it was a total problem with my kids, and I reached out. I said, I can't figure out how to do this with my kiddo, and they hopped on a call and helped explain it to me so I could explain it better and break it down because my kiddo was stuck in this one section. Their customer service is phenomenal. They want everybody to learn math. They truly, truly love math. They love what they do, and they believe in their product. So check them out, ctcmath.com, or go over to the show notes page and click on the link, or in the description for this on iTunes or wherever you're listening to your podcast, you should be able to see a clickable link and check it out because we really, really appreciate them. And like I said, we love them. All right, let's get back to today's episode.
One of the other things that's great about learning in the summer or being flexible in your scheduling so that maybe you're taking time off when others are working and you're working when others have time off is that you have the opportunity to make learning just kind of a joyful and exciting experience. It's not monotonous. It's not we go to school every day, we learn for 8 hours, and then we go home, and then that's when we do our real living. You get to work the learning around your real living. And this builds self-confidence in your kids. It builds independence. This is where we can grow kids who are passionate about different things or whatever it is their passions are. And they gain the confidence and the freedom to explore those passions. This is why a lot of homeschool families end up nurturing entrepreneurs or creatives or other kind of outside the box thinkers that graduate to do outside the box things. Now, all that said, I know a lot of homeschool families whose kids go on to college, they have traditional jobs, but they're doing things they're interested in. Learning throughout the year, especially during the summer, and sneaking that learning in through conversations and different things that you do every day builds in our kids a lifestyle approach to learning that becomes a lifelong love of learning. It also teaches them one of the things I've talked about before, that there is no shame in not knowing, that new knowledge or an answered question is never further than a Google search or an asked question or a book read or a magazine article or a mentorship relationship away. You can find out the information to anything because you're not afraid to not know. And when we stretch the learning through the summer, we show our kids that learning doesn't stop. Just because the, quote, school year is over doesn't mean that learning is over. Learning and school are two different things, and we want to make sure that our kids are learning and not schooling. And so the benefits are that continuity, that ability to reinforce things when they need more support, that they're increasingly curious and engaged, they're applying things to their real life in the real world. They're flexible. We get to personalize our education. It's more joyful. They build self-confidence and independence. And we have a lot of family time. We get to bond together as a family. So how can we do this? How can we sneak some different kinds of learning into our busy summer schedules? And how can we kind of make that more of a lifestyle approach to learning? Well, we can sneak some learning in when we're outside. We can talk about the things that we're seeing outside. We can go for walks in the park or on hikes and point out the different things in nature that we're seeing and discovering. Do you see a baby turtle? Wonder where its parent is. Hey, do turtles even stay with their babies? That's really interesting. How do reptiles do that? Do reptiles hatch their babies and leave them? Are amphibians and reptiles similar in how they breed and care for their young versus not caring for their young and just laying the eggs and leaving them? Or are there any reptiles that are like mammals that nurture their young? How long do the mammals that we're seeing in the woods, like the deer, stay with their babies? There's so many different things like that. Birds. We just saw some birds in our backyard, a couple that we hadn't seen before, and went on a tangent to look them up. So through the outside, you can sneak in so much learning just by asking open-ended questions like that. Wow, look at that turtle. Ooh, that one looks like a baby. I wonder where its parents are. Hey, that's an interesting question I never really thought to look up. Do you know? Do turtles stay with their babies? Are they like the mammals in our area? Because I know that deer stay with their parents for a while, but I wonder how long deer stay with their parents. These are things that you can just question, see what your kids know, and then look them up together when you get back. You can draw when you're out there. We took a couple years ago, we brought watercolors with us to the woods, and we sat by the creek and we painted watercolors. We've also brought watercolor pencils to sketch while we're out, and then, run over with a brush when we got back home. So there's art that you can do outside for fun. Cooking and baking in the summertime is a great way to sneak in learning. I am actually planning to do some of that this summer. I am hoping that each of my kids can get really good at 1 or 2 recipes for each meal so that we can rotate each of us through breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so that the same person's not always cooking and the same person's not always cleaning up. And this is going to incorporate math and measurements and nutrition and what a balanced meal looks like and what grocery shopping needs to look like in order for this to happen. How do we make things out of what we have versus always having to run to the grocery store? How can we pre-plan? These are great ways to sneak in learning. So is gardening. You can learn about the plants. You can learn about biology, environmental science. You can learn about the nutrition in the soil, what it takes to grow well. I'll tell you, we've tried over the last couple of years to grow gardens, and I joke that I have like a black thumb. It doesn't stop me. I love plants, and I buy plants and I kill them all the time. Some live despite me, but I love growing things. I have a hydroponic garden in my kitchen that I absolutely love, and I'm pretty good at it, but I'm pretty good at the hydroponics because, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but it's totally been worth it. The hydroponic garden that I purchased came with an app, and I purchased a subscription, like a membership to the app for the first couple of years because the app would tell me when I needed to add nutrients, when I needed to trim leaves, when I needed to trim roots, when I needed to add water, and what the light schedule should be like based on the plants that I had. And now I'm on my 3rd year of this hydroponic garden, and I finally canceled the membership to the app because I have a good handle on it. We're not quite there yet with our outside gardening. My husband is notorious for overplanting our gardens. So by midsummer, like the plants are on top of each other and kind of growing despite choking each other out. And so I'm hoping this year we can space things out better and we could do a better job. But there's a lot of learning in that, how it all works together. I interviewed someone years and years ago for a book that I wrote for teachers called Real Life Science Mysteries. And he was a landscape architect. And it was so interesting, the science behind how he designed landscapes for companies and families and houses and all of the different places that he designed landscapes for, because he looked into the science of how things fit together, what needed space, what needed specific nutrients. And so there's so many cool things to discover in that. Road trips. A few years ago, we took a road trip out towards California where I was speaking along Route 66. And the kids all were tasked with looking up different things that came along Route 66 and deciding each of them 2 things that they really wanted to hop off the highway for to see and experience. And we built our road trip around the things that the kids wanted to see. And so they were able to explore geography and history and landmarks. And they still talk about that trip, even though we were 6 of us crammed into a minivan with lots and lots of stuff, 3 weeks together. It was so fun. There are so many different things that you can do to sneak learning in the summer that it's really more effortless than we think. And the benefits are really, really worth it. So just to recap, when we, as homeschoolers especially, sneak our learning into the summer, or really, like our family, adopt kind of a year-round approach to homeschooling or learning in general, we build continuity. We are not having those summer slides and learning losses because we're just learning all the time for the sake of learning. We're able to really effortlessly reinforce different struggles that our kids might have and give them an opportunity to retain information better because they're still building on it. We increase curiosity and engagement in our kids. When we're constantly asking them questions and giving them learning experiences, they're continually curious. They don't feel shame in not knowing. They don't feel shame in asking for more clarification and understanding about a topic because they learn that learning for its own sake is valuable and they're never going to be able to know everything. So they might as well ask something if they want to know more about it. They become more interested, more interesting, and more motivated to learn. They're able to apply their learning to real-world applications. And this is very evident in things like gardening and nature study and cooking and the different things that go into building and maintaining a household. But it's also evident in, using their math skills and their reading abilities and being able to look up information. They learn how what they're learning can apply. It's also so flexible and personal. You get to design the homeschool that fits your family and not the homeschool that fits somebody else's family. Your kids will grow in self-confidence and independence because they acquire new skills. They're becoming independent learners and gaining the confidence to tackle challenges, explore new areas of interest because, again, no shame in not knowing. It's more exciting and enjoyable because learning is just part of, it's kind of play, right? It's exploration and it's interesting and fun. And then the one that I really didn't talk about that much, but I don't think it can be overemphasized, is that when you embrace a lifestyle of learning approach to your homeschool and you, quote, sneak in summer learning, you do this year round, you're spending time as a family actively participating in each other's learning journeys. You're fostering stronger relationships and you're building memories together, shared stories of what you guys did year round as a family, even in the summer, instead of separating to do all the different things that you've got to cram in because you only have a couple months off from the regular grind of school. It's just an extension of your year. So summer learning is so worth it. I would love to hear what your plans are for summer learning. So over on the show notes for this episode at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast, you can find a link to the contact form where you can click and send me an email. Tell me all about what you're planning to do for the summer and how you're planning to sneak in learning, or you can leave me a voicemail. There's a widget there on the show notes for this episode that you can just click record and you can record a 5-minute message to me. I can't wait to hear what you have planned. If you have some ideas for future podcast topics or for guests, you can leave those messages as well. I'd love to hear about them and I'd love to hear your suggestions. So check it out. And if you feel led to, I'd also love it if you would leave a rating or review at your favorite podcast app and share this podcast with others who are homeschooling quirky, creative, outside-the-box kids and who might need the support of someone who understands neurodiversity and a community that understands that. I can't wait to hear from you. I hope you have a great, great day, and I hope it's sunny where you are and you get to soak in some of the sun and the enjoyment of spring and summer dawning. Have a great week. Love on your kids, and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.